welcome back to another episode of Digitalk Architects. With us today is Tom Langan. He is in the video production and he currently has or is the owner of Telex Media. Go ahead, Tom. Please tell us about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Caroline. I appreciate it. So I've been in production for very nearly 25 years now. I started in May of 2001 was when I started my career in television right after graduating from college. Started out as an entry-level employee in the industry as a production assistant. Ended up working my way up in that career path over the years to becoming a series producer and showrunner in the television industry, which basically means by the end of my career there, I was overseeing series-wide production of television shows for networks. I decided to leave that industry in 2018, shortly after receiving, but not winning, 2 Emmy nominations for some work I did on a program called Her Big Idea, and left that industry and decided to put that skill set to work helping businesses and brands communicate more effectively with the communities that they seek to serve. And in the process of doing that, I've developed a strategy that I call Legendeering and written a book by the same name that helps detail that strategy, lays it out for the audience, and helps people understand how they can employ strategies like that for themselves and their own brands and their businesses to help build real relationships with their audiences.
All right. That's a lot. But let's start with your experience in what has that taught you about attention, storytelling, audience psychology, and how are you applying that to business owners and I guess how they're missing it kind of idea?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the most important thing is to put the audience first. And that is the place where, by and large, most brands and businesses that I work with get it wrong. They have a vision of what they want to say about themselves, about what they want to say about their products or services and how they want to describe those things. And so often those ideas drive their content marketing strategy. And the problem with that is while they are invested in the brand or the business, whether they're the founder or the owner of the company, or because it's their career path and it's where they work and it pays their bills and it covers their insurance and provides for their family and all of those things, they allow those things to drive the decision making. And the problem is they don't understand that their audience doesn't have that investment in the brand and the business that they have baked in. Right? Their audience just doesn't care about the business the way they care about the business. And that is the fundamental disconnect where I think most brands and businesses get things wrong initially, is they put their own wants first and their audiences second.
So in your experience, what is one of the signs a brand is doing this behavior, right? When they think their messaging is strong, but in reality, it is not.
So I think one of the dead giveaways is there's actually 2 that pop to mind. One is when they come to me with a full plan for what they want to film. And often that plan has been rubber stamped by all of the leadership at that company, most of whom have no background in communications.
Right.
And so when you have people who don't have experience in communications or a background or understanding of communications, developing in some cases, and then ultimately approving a strategy for content marketing or communications for their brand, you run into problems. They tend to do things backwards because they put their own kind of ideas first. They let their own kind of preconceptions drive that thinking. And the other one that comes to mind is when they come to me and they very proudly tell me that the CEO or founder of the business loves their idea.
Oh, okay. So what happens then?
Well, often what has happened is the marketing team or the CMO or whoever is in charge of comms within the business, sometimes it's a vice president of sales who also happens to manage their relationship with their marketing agency. I mean, you see this all the time. There's all kinds of
We do.
weird org charts that exist in a lot of businesses,
Yeah.
but often
Yes.
it's a person in a position of leadership
Yeah.
who has created a strategy that they have then presented to their CEO or the founder of the business. And even if they didn't intend to, what they often ultimately end up doing is creating a strategy that they know will appeal to the CEO or the founder of the company. So they are, in essence, treating that CEO or that founder as the
As
audience.
the audience. So how do you get out of the trap?
Well, I mean, sometimes it's careful conversations. I mean, there are a lot of great people in marketing at a lot of different businesses who fully understand that the last thing they should do is what the CEO or the founder wants them
You
to
know, I've
do.
been in that position.
Yeah,
I
I'm
have
sure
been
you
in
have.
that position. And I
I'm
have had to have that conversation. And then, I've sort of gotten myself in trouble for pushing, back on ideas that were what I got the answer of like, well, the CEO is not gonna like it, or I don't. And I'm like, well, it's not for the CEO, right? It's for your audience, or we're trying to do something for the audience, and the CEO is push. Or you were right on that, the weird org charts, because we have one that's the CRO. It's also in charge of marketing. You know how difficult that is?
Yeah, yeah,
And they're all about money, and the marketing side of things sometimes gets mixed in there, and they because they can't right away see the return, it's so hard.
yeah. I mean, I think one way that could make that conversation a little bit easier is, especially for me coming from the outside of an organization, I can always ask questions based on curiosity and genuinely wanting to know more information
Hmm.
that somebody inside the organization maybe wouldn't be able to ask as easily. And so I can ask the question of, the CMO or who the leadership, whoever I'm in the meeting with. I can ask them, if the CEO loves this idea and you've designed this for the CEO to love this, then tell me where the overlap is between the psychographics of your CEO and your ideal customer profile. Is there overlap there? Because if there isn't overlap there, then we need to rewind and start over.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're right in the fact that most CEOs, founders, when they're crafting those messages, they're thinking about how they feel about their product, right, and what they perceive their product to be, but not how it's perceived by others, which are in fact the people they're trying to appeal to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially in founder-led businesses or in multi-generational, like family-owned businesses,
Right.
you see a lot where they genuinely love this thing that they've built or that they're a part of
Mm-hmm.
their family history, whatever the case may be. They genuinely love it. And who can blame them, right? Of course they do.
Yeah.
The problem is that you have to lead them to understand that no one else loves their baby the way they love their
They
baby,
do.
right? They're
And I think that
looking at
applies
that
to
child as,
everything.
yeah, they're looking at that business as if it is their child and they love it unconditionally. And the problem is nobody else feels that way about it, especially not
Yeah.
their audience.
It's a complicated, when you are the one giving that message to them, it's complicated conversation. It's definitely a hard conversation to have with a founder, owner, because they feel, you're right, they feel like it's their baby, right? So they they see nothing wrong with their baby, or they don't, they don't see it how other people see it.
Yep, exactly. I mean, I think we've all had the experience of somebody showing us a baby picture of like, whether it's their kid or, a family member's kid or a grandkid or whatever, somebody showing you a baby picture and you, in the back of your mind, you go, that's not a very cute baby, right? Because
It's
truthfully,
true.
not all babies
Truthful.
are as cute as
But
other babies, right? Some babies are cuter than
true.
others, objectively. But
Objectively, yeah.
to that person, to that
To
parent or
that
that
family.
grandparent or that aunt or uncle or whoever, that baby is precious and beautiful. And you can't fault
100%.
them for that. That makes perfect sense. But you have to understand, you have to help them kind of take that step back and be like, hey, other people don't see this the same way you do. And so it's not a matter of saying you're wrong for looking at it this way. It's a matter
Right.
of saying, hey, you're bringing something to the table that other people aren't bringing to the table, and we need to look at it more objectively from the perspective of your audience or your ideal customer.
Yeah, and so that's the conversation, you know, you're when you're doing content for any company, right? And you're talking about your brand voice, your brand awareness. I think that all has to be part of that strategy, right? Which then obviously, you take into consideration when you're doing video, because that's how you're going to voice your brand. But if during the process of building your brand, you completely miss that point, it's very hard to then flip it around and come up with something completely different, because you get so much resistance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is difficult to kind of unwind that once you've gotten too far down that path. And sometimes, to your point, sometimes people just don't want to hear it, right? Sometimes they
Can't
won't
see
live
it.
it.
They're completely
Yeah.
blind to it, to their own love for their thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's part of it too. I think from my perspective is, and for anybody in sort of a B2B service space, actually for anybody in business, period, you have to accept that you're never going to win over 100% of people, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I am not 100% liked or loved by everyone that meets me, and that's okay. But you have to
Yeah.
be okay with that.
Yeah, I think the older we grow, the more we come to understand that concept. I think actually it's true, because the younger you are, you're always seeking acceptance, but as you get older, you learn to accept rejection,
Yeah,
which is, I think it's maturity, I guess.
absolutely, absolutely. But I think also, like, if you take it out of the personal and apply it to the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of businesses dilute their messaging and dilute the values of their brand, dilute their brand identity in an effort to try to appeal to more
To
people,
everyone. Yeah.
right? To everyone, which is a huge mistake. You're much better off trying to really create connection with a small group of people than you
Mm-hmm.
are to appear inoffensive to a large group of people.
Right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely correct. Okay. Let's jump into something. You and I were having a conversation, and you said transactional marketing leaves people cold. Do you think most brands are accidentally damaging trust because they are trying to convert too early?
Yes. And I think what I mean by transactional marketing leaves people cold is that there's a huge conflation between marketing and sales that happens all the time that I see, and I'm sure you see as well. That,
Hugely. Yeah.
yeah, that people use those terms interchangeably. And it's
Yes.
not ever the job of marketing to make sales. And
Please say that again.
it is
Please
not
say it
ever
again.
the job of marketing to make sales.
A sale. Yes. Thank you. You know how many times we get the, okay, so well, how many lead sales are we going to get? I'm like, yeah, we can give you some approximate numbers, kinda, but you know, but we build marketing to make your brand visible. And a lot of that is not quantifiable, right?
Right.
Because you can't accurately account for everybody that sees your brand at one point or the other. Now, that being said, in the digital world, you get impressions and whatever, but people also miss the fact that impressions are not necessarily brand views, right? But then they go, oh, but how many leads and how many sales? I'm like, well, you know, how do you, and the best way sometimes to explain it to your honor your market, the video markets, how many clients can you actually account for when you put a commercial on TV? No, it's repetition, right? Marketing is repetition and people seeing you everywhere. But how many times have they seen you before they actually click or did something with the brand? And that's the part that a lot of people miss. And it's also the part where, the disconnect, right? Or marketing and sales, right? One, it's very quantifiable and the other one isn't.
Yeah, exactly. Marketing is very, very data, or sales is very data driven, right? And easily quantifiable because you have access to that data. Whereas, marketing and content marketing in particular, and video production are much, much harder to quantify, much harder to track. And even when you can, and in the ways that you can, you're really only tracking association. You can't directly attribute, revenue to a video you made or a commercial you made. You can attribute growth to it, but partially, right? It's part of an overall it's not like the only thing you're doing in a vacuum is putting out one video and then waiting to see how many things you sell as a result of that. If you do, you'll go out of business. It's not a good way to run a business. So yeah, I mean, and I think also that idea of that conflation between marketing and sales that has kind of leaves us with this thing of transactional marketing means that businesses are taking the wrong approach to how they communicate with their audience. And what I mean by that is, if I walked up to you on the street and introduced myself the way I introduced myself earlier, gave you a whole bunch of information about me, sort of talked through my bona fides a little bit, gave you a sense that I knew what I was talking about and I had some expertise in my field, and then ended that by saying, and if you want to get started today, we can get moving on creating a Legendeering strategy for you. How do you want to pay for the deposit? You would look at me like I was out of my mind and you would walk away as quickly as possible, right?
Crazy. Yep.
Yeah, it's a crazy way to talk to people, but that's exactly what businesses are doing all the time. And I think if you look at it through that lens, you'll start to see it all over the place, that people 100%. Are doing this like transaction driven approach where they walk up, they say hi, they sort of give this impression that it's just an introduction, they're just getting to know you, and then they end that introduction with a pitch or a call to action to try to convert you or get you to step into their sales process. And it's a terrible way to communicate. If people did that person to person, they would run away from each other, right? You would run away from
100%.
You.
Exactly, because
yeah,
in person you wouldn't do that, right? Like say if you're in a networking event or an event of any kind, you wouldn't come and pitch yourself in the first, 3 sentences you exchange with a group of people.
Yeah, and if
you have to build a relationship before you even get to what do you do.
And if you did, you would very quickly become the person that everyone at that networking event is trying to avoid.
That nobody wants to talk to.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think if you wouldn't say it to someone's face, you shouldn't say it through your marketing.
I agree. In this connecting the dots between transactional marketing and your book and your philosophy, let's talk about Legendeering and the philosophy behind it and how we are basically removing the transactional marketing and then doing something much different?
Yeah. So, Legendeering was really born out of my sort of diverse experience in content production, right? So, on the one hand, I spent 17 years in the entertainment industry where the focus is entirely on growing audience. The entire focus of every project we did was to get people to want to watch what you were making. So,
Mm-hmm.
I came from that world, and now I work in a business world, which is a little bit more fraught with the idea of creating content that people want to watch, but not always really understanding who the audience is that we're making it for, right? Sometimes you're making it for an internal audience, sometimes you're making it for an external audience. And so taking from those kind of diverse experiences, I came up with this idea of legendeering, and it's a made up word, obviously, but so is Google, so is Kleenex, right? I feel like I'm in good company, but it really came from this idea of using story or legend, using story to sort of engine brand identity and audiences around brands, right? To build communities of audiences around brands. That's the sort of fundamental idea behind legendeering. And the sort of backbone of that is this idea that you should always lead with value for your audience. And I think the easiest way, because if you lead with value, you can build real reciprocal relationships. That's how relationships work, right? That's how we make friendships in the real world, person to person, is we give value to each other. We exchange value, right? The
Yeah.
most important relationships in all of our lives are built on an exchange of value. My relationship with my wife is built on an exchange of value. That is fundamental to how human relationships work. And I think that it's incumbent on businesses to lead that conversation and to lead with value first for their audiences. The easiest way I can think of to explain this is to lean on a psychological precept called the rule of reciprocation. And at its most basic, the rule of reciprocation says that you cannot take or receive without giving in return. And we're taught to follow this rule of reciprocation since before we can even speak, since we're babies. It's ingrained in our culture and in our identity. It's part of the social contract that we all adhere to.
Right.
And there's this one analogy that I use over and over again for good reason, because it tends to resonate and really help people wrap their head around it quickly. And it's this, if you'll indulge me for a second.
Go for
So
it.
so we've all been in this situation where, you're out to dinner with a friend and the check lands on the table and your friend grabs the check and says, "I got this one. Dinner's on me." Right? And you do the thing that we all do,
The
which is
dance.
the dance, the
No,
polite
I
dance.
got it. No, you got it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, let me get, no, you don't have to do that. Let me get it. Let me get my half. Let me get the drinks. Let me do this. Let me do, right. You do that sort of that polite dance, but they
Yep.
insist. And so eventually you give in and you decide to accept the gift. But really you make two decisions side by side. And it doesn't feel like that because they come out in the same breath. And so the first decision is to accept the gift and you say, "Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you. You didn't have to do that, but I appreciate it." And
Yep.
the second decision comes out in the same breath often when you finish that sentence by saying, "But the next time or the next one, it's on me, or I've got it."
Yep.
Right?
I got it.
That's the second decision. That second decision is you deciding to reciprocate.
Yep.
And that desire to reciprocate, because it's a desire, it's not, you don't feel obligated to do it. You want to reciprocate. It's so strong that a lot of times you'll go out of your way to create the opportunity. So you'll call that friend up and say, "Hey, what are you doing next Friday? You want to go check out that new sushi joint that just opened up? Yeah,
Yep.
great. Let's go. I'm buying." Right? And you'll create the opportunity to reciprocate. And so, what leading with value and following a legendeering framework can do for a brand or a business is create exactly that kind of reciprocal relationship. You create content that delivers value to your audience over and over and over again. You tie that value to your brand so they know who's picking up the check for them, and so that they know who they can reciprocate with, who they can buy dinner for the next time, right? And that reciprocation often looks like taking a next step towards becoming a customer or client, or going on to advocate for your brand or business if they're not necessarily somebody who would become a customer or client. The odds are they probably know someone who is. And so they'll go out and they'll advocate for your brand. They'll look for people to send your way for customers or
Yeah.
clients. So that's really the sort of the backbone of legendeering, is that idea of leading with value, gives you the opportunity to buy dinner for your audience over and over and over again. And when you tie that value to your brand, it gives them the opportunity to buy you dinner in return.
Okay. So you make the case there for, the reciprocation of, one and the, you do for me, I do for you. You also make the case that video is one of the best tools that we have to build authentic relationships in a digital world that's overcrowded with information. Why does video create trust faster than text, graphics, carousels? What's your take there?
Well, I think video tends to be stickier than some of those other modalities. And the reason for that is because it triggers multiple sensory inputs simultaneously. It also is a good way for people to actually see another human being, to hear from another human being, to relate to them and create an emotional response. I mean, if you think about it, I think everybody listening to this would be lying if they didn't admit that they had ever seen a film that made them cry, right? We've all had a strong emotional response to video. It is genuinely impactful. So when you combine the multiple sensory inputs that we get, because video is sight and sound, with an emotional response, you get a really, really sticky memory, one that stays with you. And so because of that, it's a great way to build relationships, because people will remember you, your message, your brand, the value that you provided them, how it made them feel, much more durably than they will remember any of that same messaging through a different medium.
Right. Is there a okay, so let me try this one. See if it comes out right. Is there, we're talking video, right? So video comes in many different formats. You have original, video, produced video, where you have mostly B-roll or, very faceless. Is there, a big difference in, if the video is very polished and it has less of an impact or more of an impact? What's your take?
So, yeah, I think there's a little bit of confusion around the idea of production value. And what you end up with is, at the end of the day, the real problem is whether or not the formatting and the underlying messaging of the piece of content was done well. That's much more important than the production value. So you can end up with content that is very well produced, that looks beautiful, that also is very impactful, or you can end up with content that is beautiful and is produced very well and has a high production value, but is low on content, low on message consistency, and low on brand identity, and low on authenticity, and all these other sort of intangibles. And that content could perform very poorly, even though it looks just as good as the other content, right? So I think really the thing that determines success is the messaging behind it, and whether or not you're successfully creating something that the audience actually wants to watch.
Okay, so on that note, what do you think is the secret sauce to good messaging? Whether polished and produced, or just good messaging on a user generated video?
Yeah, so I think there's a bunch of things. There is no sort of one thing that really sets everything apart. But I think there's a couple of things. It's got to be audience first, right? So it's got to be, it's not about you, it's about them. You have to put their wants and their needs ahead of your own when it comes to, as you devise the message for the content. You have to be authentic in the content. I like to say, be relentlessly authentic. Be so authentic that there is no choice but for your audience to believe that those are your real values, that that's actually what you believe in, because they see it everywhere, not just in your messaging, but in your operations of your business. Make sure that it all ties together, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, at the end of the day, I'll go back to my sort of, overriding maxim is lead with value, always give more than you take. So go into every interaction, every message, every goal, and ask yourself, what are we giving the audience without strings attached? It's not tied to a transaction. It's not only if they take the next step in submitting their email to get a free ebook or pamphlet or whatever, right?
Or the next school community.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's not tied to any of those things. It is free and clear and authentically theirs. I think if you do all of those things successfully, you will find that your audience will respond positively to it. But there is no sort of cookie cutter. It depends on every situation is going to be slightly different.
Yeah. From marketer to marketer, in a sense, we're both marketers in different sides of marketing, but marketing nonetheless. I see a lot of companies jump into marketing with no real strategy, right? Just a vague idea of, I need more content. How are you going to do this? When you come into a business, how do you decide what story they should be telling, who it should be for, and where video actually fits?
Yeah. So I think the way I decide what story they should be telling is pretty straightforward. Is it always should be for the audience that they want to attract, right? So the first question I ask is, who's your audience? Who are we making this for? That is the first question I ask in a lot of discovery calls. Who are we talking to? Who are we?
Do they actually know?
Not always, but asking the question makes them sometimes realize that they need to know that and pushes them to actually develop that information. So it's a good thing. But it's who are we making it for? And then once we know who we're making it for, then we look for opportunities to leverage accessible stories that we can use to get the audience to, and essentially the way I describe it is, you want to get your audience to feel good about supporting your business. If you can get your audience to feel good when they say, I'm going to subscribe to so-and-so, or I'm going to buy such and such, or I'm going to recommend this business to my friend or my family member. If they feel good when they say those things or take those actions, that's the whole game. So what we're looking for is the opportunity to create a positive emotional reaction to and relationship between your audience and your brand.
Okay, so we talk a lot about, marketing, but also AI automations in the future of marketing in, this new reality we live in a world where, AI can generate scripts, clips, captions, even voice, avatars of ourselves. I do that. What parts of storytelling should never be automated if a brand wants to stay human and trustworthy?
Well, I think the oversight is probably the one that springs to mind initially, right? You cannot automate the human oversight of the AI work that you're using, that you're creating. And often people put too much faith in the ability of AI to deliver something that looks real. It's like a bad Elvis impersonator of a human, right? Okay. I mean, that's genuinely, that's kind of what AI feels like to me a lot of times, when you, especially when you see an AI generated host or spokesperson, or hear an AI generated voice. You kind of, it's like a bad Elvis impersonator, right? You're like, well, I get it, like they're trying to be Elvis, but they're not there, right?
Yeah.
Like they're not nailing it. I get what they're trying to do. I can see what they're trying to do. They've got the hair, they've got the sparkly, sequin jumpsuit,
Outfit, yeah.
But they're not really getting it. The
Hitting the
voice is
note.
close, but it's not right.
Yeah,
And
it's
so I
true.
think people put too much faith in the ability of AI to impersonate humans, and because of that, they end up creating a lot of sort of uncanny valley content.
You want to
Right?
hear the funniest part of that story? It's going to be, my story on it. And it's fully transparent, so that's the good part, I guess, right? Like, we're not shy about admitting it. So I do a little bit of AI content, right? To kind of overlap with what we do with the podcast. And I always laugh with people because I said, "Hey, you'll know it is for one reason particularly." And it's because when we have the AI content, it removes my accent completely. So I actually sound different, right? And it's like, it's not secret. Thank God we're not hiding it, right? And we're very open about, hey, it's my message, but I didn't actually record the video. I did the script, and we have a pretty good process. Like, we sit down, during the earlier in the month, and we decide what kind of messaging we're gonna put out for that month. We build our content calendar. But most people that know me know that I would much rather record 10 podcasts in 1 week than one video just standing in front of a camera. So we do our clips for like marketing tips and stuff with the AI avatar, and that's how that's the avatar, because the avatar sounds very English and I don't.
That's funny. I mean, look, I don't have any issue with people. I mean, I use AI as a productivity
Yeah.
tool in my own business, right? I have no issue with people using AI as a tool, right? I think the
Yeah.
problem becomes when people try to pass AI off as something it's not, right? Then you're kind of,
Yes.
it's not really different than plagiarism to some extent, right? I mean, you're trying to pass something
Yeah.
off as you, or your, yeah, as you, right? I guess is the easiest way to say it.
Hmm.
You're trying to pass something off as you that is not you, and trying to take
Yes.
credit for what that thing has created, what that software has created, as if you had done the work yourself, and you
Yeah,
haven't.
it is different. So like I was saying, the way we're using it in our business, and actually I am gonna, we use it with clients too, and it has two reasons for it. It's not just, a lot of people are just, they're camera shy. They don't wanna, or they don't have the time. Like, I have clients from all sorts of businesses, and they're busy people, right? Like, they want to put good quality content out there. They just don't have the time, or it's not their priority, right? So they would rather participate in creating the messaging but leave that production to the AI, in a sense, right? Which, you know I sometimes think about it, or from, like, it's not different that if I wasn't doing it, I was hiring somebody else to do it. It would still be my messaging for my company. Somebody's reading it, right? Here, it's still very much my message read by my AI avatar, which is still me because my AI avatar was created by me anyways. So kinda. But for our business, it has actually been a solution for a problem that we experience quite often, and is our clients come in and they are like, yeah, we want to do content, and they are like super committed. I'm like, yeah, we'll send you, we'll create videos and you guys can do all the post production and post it and do all this fun stuff with it. And then a month later, 0 videos. 2 months later, it's like, I don't have time. I can never make time for it. And I'm like, okay, can you make time for half an hour to just take the initial video? It's going to take you 5 minutes. Well, 5 minutes for one, but you should have to do the retakes because you can never get it done in one shot. But then we have your avatar, and then we'll craft the message with you. And then from there on, we can create more content that's valuable to the target audience, but without the need of this business owner being present all the time. And I think for that use case, it's worked out actually fairly well.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with using it so long as you are open and honest about how you're using it and where you're using it, right? I think the problems really lie in people and organizations and brands trying to pass off AI content as authentic human content.
Right. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. But
yeah,
I
okay.
think that's where people get it wrong. For sure.
Do you think AI makes legendeering more important or less important?
I hadn't thought about this before. It's an interesting question. I don't know if AI makes it less important or more important. I think there are a lot of reasons why I believe legendeering is important. Reasons that go back, 50 plus years to 1970 and Milton Friedman and his editorial published by the New York Times on the idea that the obligations of businesses are only to generate value for their shareholders, right? And how that sort of treatise by a Nobel Prize winning economist has ultimately, over the last 50 plus years, created the sort of business environment that we all live in today, where brands and businesses tend not to value their audiences very highly beyond the transaction. Essentially, we've been taught that the people that support our brands and our businesses are dollars and cents on a P&L and nothing more. And so we don't treat them like human beings. So I don't know that AI makes it less or more important, because I think there are broader sort of social issues that make legendeering an important strategy for the moment. But I think AI can maybe help in its implementation for some folks. So I can see it being a valuable tool for people to help embrace a legendeering strategy for their brand or for their business. And I think it may push people towards creating more content themselves, and maybe using AI to help devise, the sort of the scripting, right, behind it, right, to help kind of write some of that content, or the way that you're talking about you use it for your own business to do those kinds of things. So I think it could prove very useful. I don't know that it makes it more or less important, but I think it could prove useful in getting more people to adopt it, and I think that would be a good thing.
Nice. Very good. Okay, let me throw you another question on AI. What's your favorite tool right now? Do you have a favorite tool?
I mean, right now I'm using, as a consumer, I'm using Claude.
Okay.
So I'm using the sort of the Claude ecosystem, and I think I'm pretty impressed with it. I used ChatGPT.
Me too.
For a while, and I'd heard a lot of good things about Claude's, the ability to train Claude and then its writing abilities. And so that's one of the things that I use AI for a lot, is creating first drafts of things. I'm one of those people that I have a hard time starting with a blank page. I think
a lot of people.
Yeah, probably, but I'm a very visual thinker.
I agree.
In fact, one of the things that I ask clients to do all the time is, if they have an idea of the kind of content that they want to create, I ask them to send me examples of things they like and things they don't like about what other brands or businesses have done. Because
it's funny, I do the exact same thing.
Yeah. Well, because it's so subjective that if they give me an example of what they like or what they don't like, I can very clearly envision what it is. But if they just say it, words can
I
kind of
can't
be interpreted in multiple different ways and
blur
have
the
different
lines.
meaning. Yeah, it can blur the lines. Exactly. So
Yeah.
so for me, like I use AI for a lot of initial drafting, especially for, sort of like broad communications, things like my newsletter and stuff like that. I use it to help draft and do research for some of those. And so I found I had used ChatGPT for that, and I switched over to Claude, and I think Claude's better at it.
I can't disagree. That's all I'm gonna say. I actually use Claude a lot more now than I do ChatGPT. But for certain things, I still pick the one over the other. It just depends on what I'm doing. Plus, I like for research, I usually picked up Perplexity over anything else. For images, I usually picked up Gemini, Nano Banana before I picked up anything else. But they're all getting pretty good anyway. So, but that's good. That's a good one.
Yeah, I haven't found. I will say this: I haven't really done much image generation with any of the AI platforms, and that's really because I find I get really frustrated. I've played with it a little bit, and I get
Mm-hmm.
really frustrated with the prompts and with what I get out of, even when I'm very, very descriptive. I find myself spending a ton of time writing a prompt to get something that's not a very good representation of what I was going for. And I find that I'm better off either just it's faster for me to just film something myself if I'm just, especially if it's like creating something for me or for my business, for Talix. I'm better off just filming something myself. And for outside work for clients and things, I'm usually better off creating something. I'm usually better off creating something using B-roll and stock footage and things that I can source through libraries that I have access
Yeah.
to, rather than trying to use something that is AI generated. It's faster and honestly, I think better still. I'm not, people ask me all the time, oh, are you worried about AI putting you out of business? And my answer is not even a little bit.
No. Okay. Last one. For the business owner listening who knows they need to chop more on video, but still hesitates, what's the simplest way to start creating relationship driven content without overcomplicating it or waiting for perfection?
I think the simplest way to do it is to look at, and some people already have this information on like their websites and on their landing pages and in their sales funnels. What are your FAQs? What are the most frequently asked questions you get from customers or clients or prospective customers or clients? How do you typically answer those questions? I think for people who get asked the same questions over and over and over again, you end up with some pretty stock, well thought out, practiced answers. And so my response would be record your FAQs, make videos out of your FAQs. I think that is the shortest path to creating content that helps answer questions that your audience has and demonstrates how you or your brand or your business can help your audience, or people that are likely to become customers of yours. So I would say that. And then when it comes to getting more comfortable being on camera, the dirty secret there is you have to embrace being uncomfortable. It's the only secret. It's the only way to do it. People who perform in front of cameras or on stages for a living all have a certain level of discomfort around it, but they've learned to embrace it and to take that discomfort to signify that they are about to do something that they really enjoy, or they get to do something that they love to do. So the dirty secret is you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I have a really quick little sort of strategy that I like to give people to do that you can do in just a couple of minutes a day, and it will make a difference over time. And that's to, and without posting it, and you can even start
Mm-hmm.
practicing with your FAQs with answers that you know by heart. I
Okay.
want you to take your phone, right? We all have one of these kicking around in our pockets, right?
We all do.
Take your phone out and record yourself just a 60-second response. Answer one of your FAQs. People ask me all the time, how do you do this? And this is what I tell them. Very simple. Make that video, and then I want you to watch it back 3 times. First time you watch it back, I want you to turn the volume all the way up and put your phone face down on the table or on your desk and just listen. And all I want you to listen for is what you like and what you don't like. And you can note it down if that helps, but that's it. Don't be hypercritical. Just listen for what you like and what you don't like. And then you're going to play it back a second time. The second time, you're going to turn the volume all the way down and you're just going to watch yourself. You're going to watch your body language. You're going to watch your facial expressions. And again, you're just going to note what you like and what you don't like. And the third time you watch it, you're going to turn the volume up and you're going to watch it like your audience would watch it with sound, right? With your face. And you're just going to, again, note what you like and what you don't like. And if you do that on repeat, right? If you make that like a daily habit, it literally takes less than 5 minutes, right? A minute to record, a minute per watch. We're up to 4, couple of seconds in between each of those. We get to maybe 5 minutes, right? So it's a 5-minute exercise, less than 5-minute exercise you can do every day. And it will improve not only your performance on camera, but your comfort level with it. And it will help you embrace that level of discomfort and accept how you present on camera. And over time, you may hopefully find yourself in a position where you're really comfortable creating that content for your audience that helps you show up on video more.
Okay. Now we have the secret sauce. All right, Tom, thank you so much. And homework. Yeah, that's a lot of homework because that's a daily homework.
Consistency matters.
Yeah, it's true. Right. All right, Tom, thank you so much for spending the last hour with us. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us and listening to our podcast. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks so much.